Hello everyone, my name is Dave Partner and welcome to this tutorial. And in this Node.js tutorial, we'll be talking about something called callback. It turns out that callback is one of the most powerful features of Node.js because of the way it works. It gives Node.js extra steroids. And what does it do? A callback is basically a function that waits for another function to complete a task before it performs one other task. You understand? It's a function, but it's asynchronous. And Node.js makes heavy use of callbacks all the time. All APIs of Node.js are written in such a way that they support callbacks. For example, if you make a function to read a file, your function may start reading the file, but then once it completes reading the file, it returns control to a callback function. The callback function now performs another function. You understand? So the callback is just waiting for your function to complete a certain task before it picks up. So it's very powerful, and I'll show you in an example. In this example, we'll simply create a text file and put some dummy text in it. They'll make a function to read it. Okay, and while it's reading this file, Node.js can make sure that while this function is reading this file, other functions are running. It just jumps the line and keep performing other tasks in other functions while the callback is listening. So once it finished reading the file, the callback will pick up control and perform a certain function. Okay, so let's just test it. The way the normal other functions work, that is the blocking code example. Then we test out the non-blocking code. The callback makes Node.js able to perform non-blocking code examples. Okay, so let's check it out. We'll go to our folder here and create a file we can call any name. I hope you're seeing what I'm doing. I'll right click and create a new file and call it any name. Anything you want. So I just named it anyname.txt. So we open this file and write some dummy text into it. Okay, that's it basically. So I'll save, Ctrl S, or you just save. So now that is settled, the next thing we'll do is to create a node file here, basically a JavaScript file. You know, Node.js is basically JavaScript. Create a JavaScript file and call it let's just say main.js. Okay, yes. So we created this file, so we'll open it and write a code that will attempt to read what is here. So that's it. We will attempt to write the code. Okay, so we'll first of all import a module. We'll say var. Let's just call it fs. This is just declare a variable and require a module. We require a module for reading files. It's called fs in Node.js. Then we try to read this file in a non-asynchronous manner. We use the function read file. It comes with the fs and the file we're trying to read. A read file sync. This is not asynchronous. So we have read file sync, and then we named our file. What's the name of our file again? Our file is anyname.txt, so we simply tell it to read the contents of anyname.txt. Okay, so we just say, hey, read the contents of the file called anyname.txt. Then after reading it, what you do, we just print it out. So let's just equate this to a variable. Let's just give it the variable data and say log data.toString, convert it to string, and print. You know, if you're a little familiar with JavaScript, you know what this line basically does. It reads the content of this file, saves everything inside a variable, then converts everything into a string format, then print it out. This console.log prints it out. Then at the end we can just say one last thing, console.log. We are through printing contents. So normally in a blocking code example, this we simply import this and read the file, save it here, print it out, then print this guy out. This is how this function will work. But in the next example, we'll do something more interesting. So let's just go to our Node terminal and run this file. The name of this file is main.js. So make sure that you are inside this folder. If you're not inside this folder, you'll have problem with this reference. So make sure you use in the past tutorial your CD and then navigate to this folder. And I'll say node main.js and hit enter. So as you can see, it first of all printed the contents of the so as you can see, this Node first of all did this happened serially. First of all, it read the contents of the file, printed it, which is this, and then printed the last one. We are through printing contents. Okay, but so let's try it in a non-blocking way using a callback. Okay, so if we are going to use a callback, we'll modify this function a little. So when we modify it to add a callback, what we'll do is make sure that we use an asynchronous function. This read file sync is not asynchronous, so we just use read file, which is asynchronous, and the name of the file is text. But then we'll put a comma and add a function. Like I told you, callbacks are functions. They are anonymous functions. They don't have a name. We'll say, okay, when you read the data, I'll first of all remove this guy and say read this file. We are expecting two returns. Either you have an error reading it or you have the data. If you read the data, this is what you do. So we'll say, okay, if you read the data, this is what you do, or you got an error. So first of all, check for the error. Check for the error. So we'll say, if you find an error, this is what you do. Return console.error, which is print the error to us. Now I want to quickly let you know something about return, but before then let's just say otherwise console.log data.toString. So there we have it. Then we can delete this. This is non-blocking method, and we're using a callback function. So this guy here is the callback. We're saying, hey, start reading this file. Immediately you start reading this file, jump immediately to this guy and print this and start doing other stuff on this page while this function is listening. So once you finish reading this file, this function kicks off and starts performing whatever it's inside. And this is the instruction we have inside. We're saying, hey, if you got an error, print the error, and otherwise print the full data in the file. So I want to quickly let you know something about return. In programming, once a function is running and it sees the keyword return, it stops there. So if this guy sees an error and runs this return, this function just runs whatever is here and exits and jumps to this guy. Okay, so once you have a return, you see any returning there, it's basically telling the function, hey, this is where you will stop. Okay, so let's run this. So save, make sure you save. Save. We'll get to our console window and we do node main.js and hit enter. So as you can see, what happened, it first of all printed we are through writing contents, and then before it printed the contents of the file, as opposed to the blocking way. This is blocking, this is non-blocking. In blocking, first of all printed the contents of the file because it had to wait to finish reading the contents of the file before it performs any other function on the page. But in Node.js, with the callback function, it can just start reading the file, then jump and start doing other things. So which is basically what happened here. It started reading this file, then jumped immediately to this guy and started running it. By the time it finished running, it now came back and started listening to this guy. Immediately this guy finished with the file read, it fired off an event that says, hey, I've finished and this is the data, and we printed the data. Alright, in subsequent tutorials we'll see more explanations on this guy here. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm picking all the different parts one by one so that by the time we start building a very more interesting application, you will know all the parts we're using. So thank you. See you in the next video tutorial.